March 27, 1977, 1:15 p.m. A bomb planted by the separatist Canary Islands independence movement exploded in the terminal of Gran Canaria Airport, injuring 8 people. There had been a phone call warning of the bomb, and another call received soon afterwards made claims of a second bomb at the airport. The civil aviation authorities had therefore closed the airport temporarily after the explosion, and all incoming flights bound for Gran Canaria had been diverted to Los Rodeos, including the 2 Boeing 747, KLM, and Pan Am. The Pan Am crew indicated that they would prefer to circle in a holding pattern until landing clearance was given, but they were ordered to divert to Tenerife, Los Rodeos Airport. Los Rodeos was the regional airport that could not easily accommodate all of the traffic diverted from Gran Canaria, which included 5 large airliners. The airport had only one runway and one major taxiway running parallel to it, with 4 short taxiways connecting the two. While waiting for Gran Canaria Airport to reopen, the diverter airplanes took so much space that they were having to park on the long taxiway, making it unavailable for the purpose of taxiing. Instead, departing aircraft needed to taxi along the runway to position themselves for takeoff, a procedure known as back taxi or backtracks. The authorities reopened Gran Canaria Airport once the bomb threat had been contained. The Pan Am plane was ready to depart from Tenerife, but access to the runway was being obstructed by the KLM plane and a refueling vehicle. The KLM captain had decided to fully refuel at Los Rodeos instead of Las Palmas, apparently to save time. The Pan Am aircraft was unable to maneuver around the refueling KLM in order to reach the runway for takeoff due to lack of safe clearance between the two planes, which was just 3.7 meters. The refueling took about 35 minutes, after which the passengers were brought back to the aircraft. The search for a missing Dutch family of 2 who had not returned to the waiting KLM plane delayed the flight even further. A tour guide had chosen not to reboard for the flight to Las Palmas because she lived on Tenerife and thought it impractical to fly to Gran Canaria only to return to Tenerife the next day. The tower instructed the KLM to taxi down the entire length of runway and make a 180-degree turn to get into takeoff position at the end of the runway. While the KLM was back taxiing on the runway, the controller asked the flight crew to report when it was ready to copy the ATC clearance. Because the flight crew was performing the checklist, copying this clearance was postponed until the aircraft was in takeoff position on runway 30. Shortly afterward, the Pan Am was instructed to follow the KLM down the same runway, exited by taking the third exit on their left, and then use the parallel taxiway initially. The crew was unclear as to whether the controller had told them to take the first or third exit. The crew asked for clarification, and the controller responded emphatically by replying, "The third one, sir. 1, 2, 3, the third one." The crew began the taxi and proceeded to identify the unmarked taxiways using an airport diagram as they reached them. The crew successfully identified the first 2 taxiways, but their discussion in the cockpit never indicated that they had sighted the third taxiway, which they had been instructed to use. There were no markings or signs to identify the runway exits, and they were in condition of poor visibility. The Pan Am crew appeared to remain unsure of their position on the runway. The collision occurred when the KLM airliner initiated its takeoff run while the Pan Am airliner, shrouded in fog, was still on the runway and about to turn off onto the next taxiway. The impact and resulting fire killed everyone on board KLM 4805 and most of the occupants of Pan Am 1736, with only 61 survivors in the front section of the aircraft. Who's asleep amidst the trees?
lies anxious, wide awake, fearing all manner of ghouls, hags, and wraiths. For your dolly, Polly sleep has flown. Don't dare